Hello everyone, Fred here. In this installment of TPP Dynamite, I'm going to be talking about why I am still concerned about the quality of Daredevil Born Again despite the pretty good trailer that we got earlier last week. First things first though, if you haven't already, let me encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I post film, book, and TV series reviews. I do opinion pieces on entertainment, news, and affairs. I'm also an author of adult and young adult mystery novels. I just released a new short mystery called The Intruder. There's a link to it in my video description below, and I encourage you to check it out as well. With that in mind, and without further ado, I'm going to just jump right into it. So Disney Marvel released the first official trailer for Daredevil Born Again a few days ago, and most people can agree that it was pretty good, full of solid dialogue, solid action, solid violence like unto that of the OG Netflix Daredevil. Nevertheless, I'm still not quite convinced that this show is going to be anywhere near as masterful as Netflix's Daredevil. In fact, I'm not even convinced that the show will be good. I feel that way for three main reasons. I think each one is a very good one for why any potential viewer like you should be just as concerned as I am, and I'm going to break them down for you now. First and foremost, the showrunner, the writers, and the general creative team, man. Disney Marvel post Avengers Endgame has gotten into a pattern of failing with subpar content, learning the wrong lessons from that failure, then just repeating the process again inevitably. Like how the company's takeaway from the bombing of the Marvels was not that the movie tanked because the story was garbage and starred two mid-characters from nowhere streaming series that nobody really watched, but that the MCU needed to do more nostalgia baiting by bringing Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. back for Avengers Doomsday. In this case, Disney Marvel, in examining the failure that Daredevil Born Again was originally gearing up to become, seems to have decided that the lesson to learn was that the show needed to include more R-rated violence, that the full cast of Netflix's Daredevil needed to come back, that an actual showrunner needed to be put in charge, and that a show Bible needed to be created. And those were all steps in the right direction, but they were just very basic introductory level steps in the right direction. These are things that any good show should do. However, the problem with what Disney Marvel did is that in making all those changes, they completely neglected to make the most important change to create a good show like unto Netflix's Daredevil. Bringing back the showrunner, the writers, the directors, and the general creative team from the original Netflix Daredevil. No one seems to listen to me when I make this argument, and one of the only other YouTubers whom I've heard even address this is Nerdrotic, I believe. Nevertheless, I'm going to keep on saying it because it's the truth that we all need to hear. Sure, it's good to have a showrunner and a general sense of direction, but you can't just throw any showrunner with any vision at any Daredevil project and expect it to be nearly as good as Netflix's Daredevil. Sure, it's great that Daredevil Born Again will be maintaining the violence and grittiness of Netflix's Daredevil, but violence and grittiness do not categorically make a project good. Just ask Warner Brothers TV shows or streaming shows, Titans or DMZ. Sure, Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio, and the other cast members from Netflix's Daredevil are all very solid actors who own their roles, but good casting is only half the battle. Hawkeye, She-Hulk, and Echo proved repeatedly that putting master actors like Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio into dog water stories with dog water writing is still a recipe for failure. Netflix's Daredevil worked so well because it wasn't just well cast, but also phenomenally created, run, directed, and written by Drew Goddard, Jeff Loeb, Christos and Ruth Fletcher Gage, Stephen DeKnight, Eric Olson, and other legendary veterans. People who were not only master screenwriters and directors with previous involvement in some of the best and most popular movies and TV shows of the 1990s and 2000s, but who also had tremendous love for Daredevil's source material and who'd even written some of the most beloved Daredevil comics. But as far as I know, none of them had any involvement in Daredevil Born Again. Instead, Disney Marvel got a new composer, new executive producers, a new producer, new cinematographers, new editors, new writers, a new showrunner, just generally a whole new creative team. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the show will fail, but it is a cause for concern because it is very hard to improve upon or even duplicate the quality of that original team from Netflix's Daredevil. For instance, the showrunner who was picked to spearhead Daredevil Born Again, Dario Scardapane, has a decent background working on Netflix's The Punisher, but Netflix's The Punisher was not nearly as good as Netflix's Daredevil, and Dario doesn't have nearly the experience with Daredevil as those original creatives. Meanwhile, the Daredevil Born Again's writer's room is also not nearly as good as was the one from Netflix's Daredevil either. Alright, second reason, the reshoots. Daredevil Born Again was basically halfway through production before Kevin Feige examined it and decided that it was a disaster. The show was originally going to be a Disney-fied legal drama wherein Matt Murdock didn't even suit up as Daredevil until around episode 4. The violence level was going to be PG or PG-13. Karen Page and Foggy Nelson were going to have been killed off-screen. Kingpin's wife Vanessa was going to be recast, etc. Kevin, seeing the direction that things were taking, decided the show needed a creative overhaul that would make it more in line with Netflix's Daredevil, including more R-rated violence, the full original cast of Netflix's Daredevil, a proper showrunner, and a show Bible. So at Kevin's direction, a new pilot was written, some of the old material stayed while other bits were taken out, and plenty of new material was shot and added. And I don't know, it may all turn out fine in the end, but it is rarely a good thing when a movie or TV show that's so far along in production goes in for a total creative overhaul and substantial reshoots. Many times it's a sign that the original idea for the movie or show was a bad idea and that the studio is struggling to correct the problem without tossing the project. And that rarely ever ends well because it is categorically impossible to fix a bad idea. And usually when a studio tries it, the result is a Frankenstein's monster of a movie or series with some parts that are good, plenty more that are not, none that are great, and a bunch of obvious cuts distinguishing one piece from the next so that it never feels like one whole project. Just look at Captain America: Brave New World. The idea for that movie was hogwash. The screenwriters and directors had no business being involved in any part of it. That's why that movie keeps failing with test audiences despite that it's been filmed twice, gone through about 1 billion more minor reshoots, and been stalled for almost 3 years. Okay, third, I've got a bad feeling that Daredevil Born Again is going to be too connected to other MCU stuff. There are some tragic and shady political reasons for why Disney Marvel's TV division was largely separate from its film division until around 2019, when Kevin Feige took it all over, but honestly, I feel like that was in many ways a blessing in disguise. It was frustrating for fans who wanted to see MCU film characters interact with MCU TV characters, but it also allowed MCU films and TV series to breathe separately without being suffocated by an ever-expanding mythology that no viewer could follow. You had the MCU films on one side, then on another you had the network TV shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., then on another you had the maturer stuff like Netflix's Defender shows. The films swam in their own pond, and with a few connective exceptions, each of the TV shows did too. That's part of what made Netflix's Daredevil so great in the first place. It was a simple, grounded, gritty, real story about an above-average human being who tries to make a difference in his own little community. It references the larger MCU and is informed by events featured in it, and Daredevil does occasionally interact with characters from those other Defender shows, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Punisher, and Jessica Jones, but that's it. The Hulk was not going to come to dinner in Daredevil, in Netflix's Daredevil. Daredevil was not going to be blowing up spaceships, Netflix's Daredevil again. And things need to stay that way for Daredevil Born Again. This show does not need to be ramrodded into the larger MCU, especially given the larger MCU's currently poor state. That's why seeing the inclusion of Kamala Khan's father in this show's promotional materials, or seeing the Easter egg for the Rogers musical, or seeing the Easter egg for the Pim Van Dyne Foundation fills me with concern that Disney Marvel may be gearing up to foist the larger MCU up on this show, making it yet another MCU project that viewers will be unable to understand or enjoy fully without having first seen 10 previous and probably inferior projects. And that does very much make me wonder all over again about what sort of quality this show will ultimately have. Anyway, that's it. Those are my concerns about Daredevil Born Again, and they remain even after my seeing the pretty cool trailer. I'm not saying that this show is going to fail, and I hope that it does not. But after Disney Marvel has spent the past 5+ years taking my hopes and dreams for MCU projects and setting them on fire, it's hard to be anything but suspicious that the studio will just do it again with Daredevil Born Again. Which is why, when it comes to this show, my plan, like it is for most current MCU projects, is essentially to hope for the best, but expect the worst. But that's just my opinion. Sound off in the comments below to let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Or are your feelings more complex? Meanwhile, if you liked this video and made it this far, don't forget to leave a like, click subscribe, ring that bell, and hey, follow me on social media as well. So long.